Soon there's going to be this new movie coming out about Padre Pio, and the main actor is Shia LaBeouf, and he's playing the role of Padre Pio. So Bishop Robert Barron actually sat down and did his interview with Shia LaBeouf. And of course, Shia became famous in his role in Even Stevens back in I believe it was in the 90s. And after that, he had a rough path. So he had problems with alcoholism and just anger, and he went through a period of actually imprisonment, but also he went through rehab. And so this movie to play Padre Pio was this big break for him because he wanted to enter back onto the scene to get back into acting. And it's interesting in the interview because he goes through and he's talking with Bishop Barron about the process. And he started going to a seminary, and he would meet with the priest every day, and he would go to mass with them, and he would slowly cultivate what it means to be Padre Pio. And of course, he had to learn how to say the mass as well for the movie. And as the people got to know him, they kept coming up to him and saying, "Don't mess this up. This is important. Don't mess this up." And Shia quickly had this transformation of heart where he realized, I'm not just doing this thing, I'm not just, play acting something, but what I'm actually doing really matters. And this impacted his heart so much that he actually converted and decided to become Catholic. What the transformation that Shia went through, this conversion of heart, this realizing that how important it is that we're dealing with, is really what today's gospel passage is all about. So it's interesting because we see Jesus both commend and rebuke the dishonest steward. So we have the steward who squanders his master's wealth. Now, the steward would have been a slave, but he would have been ahead of the slaves, and he would have lived very comfortably, almost like the rich would have in that time, but he was a slave, he was not a free person. So when the master sent him out, he had nothing. So what he does is he goes and he decides to take these bills that people owe to his master and say he reduces them by great measure so that he'll be welcomed into their household. And what he's doing is he's making a plan for his success. And what Jesus says is we need to be, when it comes to the riches, the true riches, meaning the riches of eternal life, eternal salvation, we need to do everything we can to attain that. So just like the dishonest steward who went and, he did these rash measures in order to try to ensure his livelihood, so too, we need to do rash measures in order to ensure our livelihood in the world to come. But then Jesus goes on and he says, children of the world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. In other words, we're good at getting people to do what we want or accumulating wealth or getting things to happen our way. But how are we when it comes to dealing with things of eternal life? And this is where this dishonest steward was dishonest in small matters, meeting his master's wealth. But he would also be dishonest with great matters, meeting the matters of eternal life. And this is why we cannot worship both God and mammon. Oftentimes we have this idea in our society where, wealth, the pursuit of happiness, getting a perfect job that gets us lots of money is going to give us great happiness. But we know that that's superficial. That lasts a moment. Several studies have been done, and I think once you make over a certain threshold of money, you're not any happier. And that only provides a temporary moment of happiness. It is interesting when we think about it because we see some of the happiest people are people who don't have a lot of money, who don't have a lot of material goods. We have some religious sisters with us here today who have taken a vow of poverty, and yet we see their happiness. Even though they don't have all these goods of the world, they have something else. And this is what Shia LaBeouf found. It was that something else. It's that presence of Jesus Christ. It's that gift of eternal life. So what we need to do is we need to strive to do everything to try to attain eternal life. And it may sound like a tall order. It may sound like a lot to ask. But when you think about it, what's more important? As those of us who were at the conference today, we heard, Scott Hahn say about how this life we have a 100% mortality rate, but we also have a 100% immortality rate. We don't need to worry about things of this life, things that bring us happiness now, but what brings us happiness in the life to come. And this is where we need to weed out those things that drive us away from Christ, those sinful behaviors, those focusing on money and things that lead us away from the church. And we need to make sure that we're following the Ten Commandments. Are we coming to church on Sunday? Are we keeping holy the Sabbath? Are we honoring our mother and father? Are we doing all of those things that God has asked us to? Or do we brush them away and say, well, it doesn't really matter? But it does matter. And when we do sin, when we do slip up, are we asking for forgiveness? It's not enough to just say, oh, well, God will take care of that. It's fine. Because we have to have that conversion of heart. We have to put in the effort. We have to say, no, I don't need this. I don't need this thing that I think is going to give me happiness. Instead, I need to cultivate those things that bring me to eternal life. And this is where it's a good practice for us to focus on, am I accumulating wealth for myself, or am I giving to others? Am I sharing the blessings that God has given to me, both by being here in church, coming to the worshiping community, worshiping with my community? As we heard in today's second passage, we're supposed to pray for one another and pray for those in authority, because it's very easy to get stymied by the ways of the world and to now focus on the ways of life, the way that bring us to that eternal life. So today, Jesus gives us this challenge. We need to ask ourselves the hard question. Are we following the ways of the world? Are we following the ways of eternal life? Are we taking the gifts that God has given to us, and are we using them to promote the gospel message, to evangelize? Are we using them for God's greater glory? Are we using them for our own self-interest? And are there areas of our lives where we're just kind of like towing the path and, maybe just ignoring it, not saying, I know the church doesn't agree with this, but that's okay? Or are we trying to have that authentic conversion of heart so that we can enjoy eternal life and life to come, and to bring those people around us with us by the example of our lives? And may all of us, like Shia LaBeouf, who had that experience, that conversion to want to grow closer to Christ, may we see the importance and dignity of what eternal life means. And may we spend each and every moment of our day using our gifts prudently so that we can enjoy eternal life and the life to come and bring those around us with us.